Hello, and welcome to the Planter Podcast, where we make it or try to make it easier for you to grow food. I am one of your hosts, Peter Keefe, and I garden in Connecticut.
I'm Mylan Turner. I'm an urban gardener here in Atlanta, Georgia.
And I'm Erin. I'm a market gardener in Huron County, Ontario, Canada.
All right, and we're back again, and it is the end of the season. I don't know about y'all, but this is my garden. Nearly everything's dead. So,
Well, if you could
I,
see outside my window, you'd see snow right now.
your window does look very bright, like all the snow is reflecting into your house. Yeah,
And this
and
week in my garden, I'm approaching 80 degrees.
it's balmy. I
Oh
wish I.
Yeah,
man.
it's crazy.
Yeah.
We
So,
had,
this recording, we're gonna talk about our successes and failures in the garden, and basically like just go over how our gardens did this year, and what we can learn from it, all of our mistakes, or unfortunate things that maybe it was out of our control. Who knows? Um, So yeah, I don't know who wants to go first. Anyone volunteers here?
Why don't
Aaron?
why don't you kick it off, Peter?
Oh,
You had an interesting journey this year.
okay. I did. I actually have some pictures to show for all of our audio listeners. I'll do my best to describe what I'm showing. So, people that have listened to the podcast for a while probably know that I have a community garden plot up by University of Connecticut, and I got tired of driving up there to go garden, especially being such an avid gardener like myself. I wanted something closer to home. So this is I unfortunately did not take a picture of them taking down the trees where the actual garden is. This is them taking down a big beech tree that was dying and was dropping limbs. But to the right of the photo is where the garden sits right now. So they took down this big beech tree, and I said, "Can you take down these other trees too while you're at it?" And as much as I hate removing trees, uh, I like having a garden more than having trees. So this is what it looked like when I was planning it out. I put these PVC poles in. This is a picture of the cleared area with PVC poles where each garden bed's gonna go, so I could kind of like picture where it was. Of course, I was also planning it out in Planter. I had a big garden plan and was rearranging it. I think I had about 7 different designs I was working through in Planter by the time I came to the one I finally ended up using. So then this is a picture of the raised garden beds after I put them in. And this lumber is from a local uh, lumber mill, so a sawmill. So it's 2 inches for real. It's not 1.5 inches like the stuff you get from Home Depot. Um, and it is untreated, which I may pay the price for that in a few years. We'll see. Um, but for now, I think it'll work. And so these are just 4x8 raised beds, and at the bottom you can see some um, hardware cloth, and that's to keep any critters from digging up through the underside and getting into the beds. Um, and this is just like a lesson learned I had from previous gardens I've made, where I had bowls all over, and they would dig all around. And even if you surrounded the outside of the raised bed with fencing, they just dig under. So there's no time like when the raised bed is empty to put down some fence to keep them out. And here's
And
this
I
little.
saw you had quite a few stumps there to start with too. So that I think you've talked about that in the past. Like that's quite a project to get that all cleared out.
Yeah, and I paid someone to remove the stumps, but there's only so much they could do, and there's like so many roots that are just under everything because there were so many trees here. Um, so it was a lot of work this whole summer, uh, digging holes. The land is sloped. If I go back, you can see it kind of slopes downhill. So I would dig in the upper side and then kind of build out a little bit on the underside. So um, to make these as level as possible. But yeah, the whole year I was just battling stumps and rocks. I like to say this year I grew more rocks than I grew anything else.
The good thing
So
about rocks,
a
though,
New
is
England joke.
unlike weeds, they don't come back.
Yeah, yeah. You put them in a pile and they stay there.
Hmm.
So this is one of the stumps that I actually wanted to keep. So this is a setup I have, and for audio listeners, I've got a router that is supported by these two spare metal brackets I had lying around, and these I was basically leveling off this stump so that I could put a green stalk on it. So it's perfectly level, and I've got two of these stumps, and they're at both corners of the garden. Um, two of the corners. There's four corners in the garden, but the two that are farthest away from the house. So it makes a really good stand for the green stalks. Um, and there's a picture of the green stalk on it with a bunch of the raised beds filled up with dirt. And for the dirt, I got it from a local garden supplier, and like a not a garden supplier, a like a materials
Landscape.
supplier.
Hmm.
Yeah, so I actually have a trailer that I got this year also. So I would go there, get a load of their garden mix, which was compost, topsoil, and manure, and just shovel it in. And I could do one garden bed at a time to before I could max out my my trailer. So it was a lot of shoveling, but it worked
And what
out.
was it, like a triple mix or garden bed
Yeah,
blend, or what did they?
yeah, triple. So it was topsoil mixed with compost and manure.
Nice.
And I can't remember the exact ratios, but it was very similar to the mix that Gardner Scott recommends in his book. Uh, just anyone who's looking for a good book to read. We did a podcast a few episodes back with him, and it's an excellent read. And he'll recommend exactly while I was building this garden, I was reading his book, so it was very very helpful to know. Oh yeah, okay, good. I've got a good mix of compost and manure and the regular topsoil too. So this is the first harvest I got out of the garden. It was a bunch of cucumbers and some sugar, not sugar snap peas, but snap peas, as a few peppers. I think this was picked by my son, so he was very. They always love going in the garden picking everything. And then the tomatoes did well this year. Um, this is one of those green stalks that I filled with herbs. So the top level is dill. Then I've got some purple and green basil, and then and the two bottom rows cilantro.
Hmm.
And to the left of that, you can see a little bit of my pepper bed, which I was growing a bunch of snack peppers this year, and they all did very well. Um, and the hot peppers did okay too, but like I'm really happy with how the snack peppers did, especially because I grew them from seed,
Hmm.
and they were the only pepper I grew from seed that actually worked. And they were also the only pepper I grew from seed that I did not. I just took some seeds out of a grocery store snack pepper, threw them in some dirt and an old uh, some recyclable plastic from our recycling bin, and left it on the counter, and then they grew. So, and only once they started growing, I was like, oh, this is gonna work. Okay, I'll put it under some grow lights. Uh, but yeah, they did very well. Um, the carrots did pretty well too. I tried this new blend with all these different colors. I've learned that carrots are mostly orange for a reason. The orange ones taste the best, in my opinion.
No,
You
I
don't think
like the
so?
yellow. I love the yellow
Okay,
carrots.
the yellow ones what do you call these yellow?
Yeah,
Okay,
like the big
the big
ones in the
one, the
middle.
big ones, maybe those are yellow, but then there's like a regular orange one there.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, the yellow ones are okay. The purple and the white ones, I did not like the taste of.
Oh, okay. Hmm.
They were just a little bit more bitter, I guess. It's hard
Hmm.
to describe. Um,
Hmm.
they do look really cool though, uh, for sure. Like if you're doing a market garden like Aaron, I'm sure you could sell them a lot easier if you have fun
I did
colors.
do a few rainbow blend carrots this year, and they do look super pretty for sure. And I love the yellow. Like I find the yellow has a little bit of a milder carrot flavor that I really enjoy.
Mm.
But yeah, I could see what you're saying about the purple and the white. I honestly find that in the blends that I've had, it's hard to even find the purples and the whites. Like it tends to be predominantly the oranges and the yellows, and then every once in a while, it's like, oh, there's a purple.
Yeah, this
Um,
blend was like so white and purple heavy. The
oh,
yellows and the oranges were hard to come by.
mm-hmm.
This
Yep.
photo is just yeah. But for the most part, we I just pull them up and be like, oh, there's another white one that I don't like. Okay,
So remind us
I've
again,
literally
what
had to
was
go
your
hunting to find. It's like, okay, this bunch needs a purple. Like, where's a purple?
yeah.
It looks like you've got a red one in there too.
I think it's just a purple with less dirt on it. I don't know.
Uh,
Yeah.
remind us again, what was your time frame for growing those carrots?
So, oh, when did I put them in? So everything this year got a late start because I didn't have dirt in the garden until I think I could look back at when I put when I took these photos, but that would take a while, and I don't want to mess up the stream.
Yeah, no. So I only reason I ask, I wonder if the dark ones and the white ones, in my experience, I've seen like those seem to be a little bit more sensitive to temperature, and so I wonder if growing during the cold, the purple and the white would taste better.
hmm.
I've actually got the rainbow blend planted, so I'll be real interested to see how they turn out here.
Hmm.
yeah, that could be. Um, yeah, I don't know. You should do an experiment, Mila,
I
and
100% will. I'll
yeah,
do a taste test and see if I agree.
yeah. Oh, yeah. Maybe I should do that next year too. I could plant this batch, maybe just a smaller section, and see if I plant it at different times of the year if it's better.
Hmm.
Or I could just go orange and go back to my favorite. Maybe some yellows
Yeah.
like Aaron's saying.
It'll also be interesting too, growing the second year. I think your soil will kind of settle in and
Hmm.
become even more enriched. I wonder if that'll impact your flavor and harvest as well.
Hmm.
I hope so. Hopefully I haven't I'm not going to really supplement too much compost next year because it was only 1 year.
Mhm.
Um, but hopefully I haven't tapped out some of the beds with the higher nutrient plants like tomatoes. We'll see because
I
next year
wouldn't
I'll
think so. Not
yeah.
with that blend. They're typically quite heavy in compost.
Hmm.
And they're when I went with that blend once, I tested it. Nitrogen was a little low after a season, but the phosphorus and potassium were still quite high
Okay,
after a season or two. So I think you'll be fine there.
good to know. I got a few more photos. Um, this is the garden as it stands now. I just went outside and took this like an hour ago. So that's the garden fence. You're coming from my house to it, and it's like a double gate at the top, and I put it at a diagonal just to make it look nice. And then as you come in, there's 5 beds. It's like a 5 by 2, so 10 total beds. And one of the beds, the one that's closest to the gate, is only instead of a 4 by 8, it is a 2 by 4 foot bed. Um, And that's because I'm gonna build a potting table there. So I have
Um,
a little workspace. It's also the shadiest spot, so I wasn't gonna be growing too much in that bed anyway. So I figured I'd use it for a table. So,
That'll be
and
nice.
then as you can see, I've got a lot more soil to fill in the second row of garden beds. So I'll be doing more shoveling, either this fall or in the spring. So,
So, what would you say your biggest lesson learned from having the gardening in this space for the first time?
um, I probably bit off more than I could chew with this big fence. You can see, um, hiring out, digging all these fence posts would have been worth it in in hindsight. Because there are so many times I would dig down, and I'd spend maybe like 4 hours on a single hole, just trying to get through some big boulder or something that was in the soil. So gardening wise, um, there's a few things I wish I would have covered for pests. I didn't think that the pests would find this garden so fast, it being
mm,
the first year.
Hmm.
Um, Cucumbers, um, and squash. They even, I think I had some sort of bug eating the inside of my celery stalks because they were all hollow on the inside of each stalk. So next year I'm gonna
mm.
try growing those under a cover. Um, here's like yeah, I'm gonna go a little forward. So I grew my cabbage under a cover to keep the bugs away. And it did a great job keeping the bugs away. I just harvested one yesterday, made some great coleslaw. Um, they didn't grow as big as I was hoping, but I got one per square foot, so I've got a whole bunch. I might try spacing them out more next year. I've got another photo. This is from earlier in the year, so you could see how this variety I have really purples up once the
As it
weather gets
matures.
cold.
Okay.
Hmm.
It's in the last few weeks as the weather's gotten colder, it just went boom purple. So just like this sweatshirt I'm wearing right now.
Do you remember what variety that was?
I need to open up Planter so I can find this out. Okay, let me just. I got it in the app in my seed box. I can tell you. Cabbage. It is the oh, I can't pronounce this. Violacio di Verona. It's some
Oh, very
Italian thing, I
nice.
think.
Nice.
It's from Baker Creek. So yeah, and it was advertised as a green slash purple variety. Um, I think next year I might try, instead of doing just one variety, I'm gonna try a regular green also
Mhm.
and see if I can get bigger cabbage heads that way. Maybe it was the variety. Maybe I don't get enough sunlight here. I get about 6 to 7 hours during the middle of summer, so it's not a ton, but it's enough for things like tomatoes.
Mhm.
Um, over here, this is recent. I've got those snack peppers under a frost cover still. So this time of year, one of the things we're going to talk about later on is things you can do for winterization. This is something I've been doing, and it's really extended the season for these snack peppers that should have died off in the first frost. And they're still going. I just grabbed a pepper off of them when right after I took this photo and ate it. So yeah, definitely a great way to extend your season if you've got the frost cover, if you've got the hoops. Um, it's yeah. I'm glad I went out there and put that on there before our first frost. Um, just a few things here. I have a little sign up there that says Peter's Garden. I made this little hose reel and 3D printed it, and that's something if anyone's interested. I am 3D printing a lot of garden things for gardeners. So I got the hose reel. I've got um, little clamps to hold your frost fabric onto the hoops. Um, the the caps on the outside of like the fence that are holding the little string lights around, those are 3D printed. So I'm gonna come out with a post. If anyone else is really into 3D printing and gardening like me, check that out. And then uh, this is a picture of the community garden after I weed whacked it a couple weeks ago. Um, I'm not. I was gonna do both this year, and pretty quickly I realized I didn't have time for both. So it kind of just went to a bunch of weeds. So next year I'll be just doing the garden at my house, and I'll let someone else have this nice plot here. Um, so I did put some like cardboard down to keep the weeds at bay for whoever gets it next. So hopefully it's not a big mess. This is Mylan. You're asking my biggest failure. This is the watermelon I got.
Oh,
It's about
so
it
cute.
was about golf ball sized. I said I'll cut it up and serve it out to the family. So here it is, that big slice of watermelon, um, with some pasta. Yeah. So
I
I
love to
just can't
see
I can't grow watermelon. I can't grow pumpkin. The squash vine borer gets it
yeah.
every year.
Hmm.
So, but I'm gonna try again. I try every year.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, and that's it for me. Mylan, I got your slides up if you want, or we could.
Yeah, I'm ready to go.
Okay, okay.
So that my first one is my okra. I had a very good year for okra. I keep saying every year I'm going to pickle some and preserve some. However, I have a really bad habit of eating it right out of the garden, right off the plant.
Nice.
So very little makes it indoors. I like to harvest them right about 2 or 3 inches like that. If they get bigger than that, I'll save them for seeds. But I had a really good year, maybe 4 plants, and they did really well in the heat here in Atlanta. We had a
Hmm.
pretty dry, hot summer, and when other things started to struggle, the okra really showed out.
That's good.
Which variety is that?
That I want to say is Clemson spineless.
Nice.
Oh, that's like the
Classic.
most, yeah, the
Yeah,
most common one. Yeah.
yeah. But
I
even, a lot of people talk about okra being like slimy and stuff like that when you've seen it traditionally cooked. But when you pull it right off the plant, it doesn't have that at all. You just get
Oh,
this sweet okra flavor, not mushy, just crisp. Really, really interesting experience. I really recommend it
I've
to
never
everybody.
thought to eat it fresh. I don't know
hmm.
why.
Oh, it's so much better. And I like cooked okra. We'll even fry it up, but
Uh-huh.
eating it right off the plant, like I said, 2, 3 inches back, super crisp, really tender. It's a must grow for me from here on.
You know what plant I think is underrated for eating fresh is tomatillos. They just got this like sweet and kind of sweet and sour, crisp. Yeah,
Really tangy. Yeah.
more people need to try fresh tomatillos too. So
I still haven't tried. I'm gonna have to try that. I
I
just
think
grew them
I,
for the first.
yeah,
I
Yeah, I
think
grew
I've
them for
made
the
a
first time
salsa
this year.
with
That's
fresh
perfect.
tomatillos, but that's about it.
yeah, just eat it like I think it kind of tastes like an apple, kind of
Hmm.
is, but a little different.
It is very fruity. You go in
Yeah.
thinking it's going to be closer to a tomato, but you're right. It's very fruity. And I
Hmm.
grew them for the first time based off of your recommendation. And so, just like you said, I wanted to see what it tastes like before I did anything to it. And so I just ate a couple right off the plant. And yeah, highly underrated.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Oh wow.
My sweet potatoes. I
It's,
just
it's a
harvested those last week, and y'all, I was stunned
that's the
at
size
how
of your
large.
arm, your forearm.
Yeah, yeah. I pulled like maybe four that are bigger than anything I've seen in the grocery store. So I've got those two cratefuls. Those Tracks are like 12 by 12. So I filled up two of those, and I just talked to my neighbor today. She's going to make some pie and some sweet potato souffle. So I'll be taking those over to her after they finish curing.
Amazing.
Nice.
This was my worst year for tomatoes ever. I'm still quite sad about it. I had one plant that just never fruited. It was a determinate tomato that got about 6 feet tall, did not put on any fruit. Super green, super lush, but the timing wise for the flowers and the pollination, something was off. It started to flower just at the height of our drought, and I just don't think the plant ever recovered. This one actually did fruit earlier. We had a stretch prior to the drought of like 3 straight weeks of rain. And I was trying to figure out what this damage was, and I later realized this is slug damage. So while it was super wet, the slugs were thriving in that space. And I could never find like caterpillars or anything like that. And once I started seeing kind of the pit marks, I realized it was slug damage.
Hmm.
But yeah, this was my fail of the year. My two main fails were tomatoes and my corn. Both of those were impacted really heavily from that super quick transition of extreme wet moisture to super high temp drought. It just ruined those.
Yeah, you will. You know the solution to that is just to have better weather, Mylan.
Hey, I'm working on it. I'm gonna get the timing better a little bit better this year to hopefully have things fruiting before we get that weird period in June. So this past year, I think I went in, I planned it out maybe the third week of April. I'm going to watch it a little bit closer, but I'm going to try to have more things in the ground right around April 1st this time. And that if the weather holds similar to last year's trends, I'll have more ready to harvest before those periods hit. So that's the theory anyway.
Hopefully that works out for you.
Well, and like you were saying with the okra, like the good thing is even when the weather's kind of crazy, usually there's some crops in your garden that are loving it, even when the others aren't. So that's kind of the beauty of having a really diversified garden is it's like, okay, it was a terrible year for tomatoes, but the okra and the sweet potatoes are like rocking out with the heat. So sometimes it's just the way it goes. It's like, this is a bad year for this. It's a great year for this. And
the other one I found that really thrived, and I don't know if I have pictures. Oh, yeah, the poblanos. My hotter peppers loved the extreme heat. They did not continue to fruit nearly as much. So the pollination, it was a little too hot for the pollination, but the fruits that had already started to fruit, they thickened up. You can see that jalapeno start to turn color. So they went from the deep green to this chocolatey brown color, but they were some of the best tasting. These were actually quite hot too. I think that had a little bit something to do with the being able to dry out, not to the point of wilting, but the flavor intensified under those conditions.
They look great.
How did you cook those? What did you use those in?
I do a lot of just stuffing them, so like in the air fryer, but not the traditional deep fry. So I'll make a taco blend, the ground beef, rice, and seasoning, and then I would stuff them in there, and that's my favorite ways to eat.
So good.
Second to frying poblanos in a cast iron pan. Once you smell that, your life will be changed. There's something about that combination that I'm absolutely addicted to. Cucumbers, I had a great year. Those I did get in maybe a little bit earlier. So I got those going before the beetles came in. So I harvested a lot. I did pickling variety. So I actually did not harvest it enough for long-term storage. We did a lot of really, really quick pickles. And they're another one that I eat way too many right off the plant. I'll harvest them on the smaller side, and they just have a really, really sweet cucumber, subtle cucumber flavor that I enjoy. But those are growing up the trellis on that's the front side guard, and they just climb that trellis, which is about 6 to 7 feet tall, and it just was loaded with cucumbers.
Nice.
Mhm.
Do you remember what variety you were growing?
I did one called Hasinator from Grow Haas, and
Oh.
then it was their, I think a classic pickle, I think is the name of it. I'd have to look it up, but I did two. And I would recommend that because they just produced a lot of flowers and that drew in lots of pollinators. And I may get some cross pollination, but I'm more so wanting the pollinators in to get more fruit. So,
Hmm.
but they did really well this year. Watermelon. I did Sugar Baby and Mini Me, and those were out of this world. My best year by far with watermelon. I don't show any cut. It was one of those where I was so excited I just ran in.
I'm sure it's about the same size as mine, right? Yeah.
So these actually don't get huge, and that's why I like these so much. They're about the size of what a cantaloupe or a honeydew would be,
Hmm.
but the flavor is so intense. There's one thing I did learn about these that I will warn other gardeners about. These have just the same amount of seeds as a large watermelon would. I cut it open thinking, oh, it'll be proportional. No, they're like riddled with seeds.
Ah,
But, I'm a Georgia boy, so I know how to get rid of them. But it just was,
yeah.
I was not expecting the seed density to be what it was.
Well, and I think like for me, the flavor really offsets the seed spitting. Like sometimes when you buy the seedless watermelon from the grocery store, not always, but a lot of times, they can be a little either underripe or overripe or a little bit flavorless. But you're right, the sugar baby has a really nice concentrated flavor.
So
Um,
concentrated. They were so fantastic. I grew quite a few of those, but just in one bed. So that bed is roughly 3 foot by 8 foot. And I think I had three plants in it, and I let the vines fill the bed and then crawl into the walkways, the pathways, and let them continue to crawl. And they put out so much fruit. It was a banner year for those two.
Ah, if only.
You got it next year. I'm telling you, once your soil settles in, maybe put down a little organic fertilizer.
Yeah.
But I'm telling you, it's going to come.
mhm.
I think I'll try doing what you did, probably put 3 or 4,
Yeah, give them room
and
to
then
give
and
them
then I'll
room to
cover it,
crawl.
and hopefully that'll keep the squash vine borer out.
Mhm.
So
No, I had a very
fingers
similar
crossed.
experience to you. It's really funny that these insects that you don't pay attention to before you start gardening, and then they suddenly like, why would a squash vine borer be in an area where there's been no squash, in the recent
Yeah.
times? But they know they can sense it and they can find it, and I have had those same experiences. So
Mhm.
I have a wooded lot behind me that's about an acre, and the stuff that comes out of there looking for veggies to eat, I know that feeling quite well.
Mhm.
Yeah. I,
Some of the insects have really surprising host plants too. Like for me, it's been a combination sometimes of like, you're right, like how far did these things have to fly to get here? And then also like sometimes it's like, oh, like, this can actually feed on corn, and that's why it was here in the first place. So, or even certain weeds, like sometimes they hang out on weeds and then they see your crop and go to town. And yeah, sometimes it's surprising what they can, you know,
I was
lie in
extremely
wait on
surprised,
until you plant something.
especially being in an urban area. I'm not super far from even the freeway, so it's just like I'm in a heavy residential area. We do have a few wooded lots, but I'm still continuously surprised about how much insect pressure there can be even in an urban area.
yeah. Well, do you have neighbors that are close by with a veggie garden that they could just hop over to yours?
So I've got several neighbors that have recently started after I did, and I'll tell you the most amazing thing is when somebody tells you that they started a garden because they saw yours.
Yeah.
So having mine out front, I've met quite a few people that have started. Um, but yeah, so that's been a really, really cool experience. The insects, I don't know if they're going to see the neighbors yet, but they spent quite a bit of time in mine.
Yeah. All right, Aaron, how is your y- even bigger than my new garden? You have a new market garden.
Yes, it was a whirlwind to say the least. I honestly don't know where the season went. And I don't have slides, but I do have a couple blog posts if any of the listeners want to go check that out. I've been doing some journaling over the season about getting this market garden off the ground and running. Yeah, and I mean that's basically been the gist of it, is just running all season long. So we moved to this place in February, and so it was basically at that point in time that I could, start planning and buying seeds and, thinking everything through. Um, and where I'm growing it was a cornfield before. And the farmer who grows there, he does no-till. So even when we got in the winter, there was, corn stalks yay high sticking out of the ground. And so that was kind of the first challenge, honestly, was just getting the garden area prepped, because in a perfect world, I would have had it all done in the fall, tilled, amended, prep, tarp, all that good stuff. But that just wasn't the reality for us. So we ended up getting it tilled in the spring. But it wasn't as early as I had hoped. So I was hoping to get in by about the third week of April at the latest for the very, very first crops. And we didn't get in until near almost mid May. And that was just because it was a super wet spring. And to bring the heavy equipment out, like, it would have compacted everything. So we were just kind of in limbo. And then even once the corn stalks were, tilled in and dished up and everything, man, oh man, it is a nightmare. You have to rake them out. Like, they're like little mini trees. Like, they're surprisingly strong and fibrous. So there's no way you can plant around them. So we had to get it all raked out and moved aside. And so that was quite a project. And then, like you, Peter, I had quite a few rocks to deal with. It's not a super rocky soil, but it's rocky enough that it would be challenging, especially to push a seeder through. Like, if you're transplanting, the debris and the rocks, it's not as big a deal in some ways. Although there were a few bigger rocks. Like, a lot of the beds, I ended up forking them, and you would find a few hidden bigger rocks under the surface, which would not be good. So anyways, long story short, a lot of time spent this spring that I'm really hoping will pay dividends next spring. Just doing that grunt work of getting the ground as ready as possible. And
Yeah,
then
I'm sure it will pay off like crazy. Yeah, hopefully.
Now that leads to another debate that I'll get to at the end of the season. But then my next challenge was with the seed starting. So in my house, I had a really, consistent system. It was pretty simple for starting seeds, but it's not really well designed for growing at scale, right? So I had to kind of think through how to do things a little more efficiently. And the other thing is where I'm starting seeds now, it's a detached workshop with heat. So now I'm kind of trying to balance the heat aspect as well, because we usually start our transplants, onions and leeks and some of the really crazy long things you could maybe start in February. But for the most part, you're kind of looking at mid-March for starting indoors. And so then you're kind of juggling, okay, how much do I want to spend on heat and, heat mats and things like that. So it took a little while actually to kind of get the temperature dialed in. Whereas in my house, it's like, well, it's, it's a nice room temp all the time. Maybe for the peppers, I throw a heat mat under it. Voila. Right. So that was a little bit of a learning curve, but the biggest learning curve, and I talked about this in my first blog post, was finding out by like, I want to say end of April or mid-April, that our shop water was run off the water softener in our house. And so probably most listeners know, but softened water is typically done by adding salt. So it makes a saline water, which your seedlings don't like. So that was one of the things that I was really butting my head up with this season, was all these different changes I was making to my seed starting process. And then I was starting to see some of my seedlings struggling. And I was like, is it this? Is it that? What's going on? And then once I fixed the water issue, then I really saw things take off. The only plants that absolutely didn't make it, and this is one of my 2 big fails for this year, maybe 3 fails, were my onions, because they were the things that I started way ahead of everything else. So
and
it was
in
kind
that
of
salt
like
solution, right?
Yeah, it was kind of like a continuum. Like the onions were the worst. The peppers, recovered with some losses. The tomatoes did fine. Like I had no issues with tomatoes, and then everything subsequent to that. So yeah, I was really bummed. I was gonna do Ailsa Craig onions, which is like a nice big sweet onion. I was super excited about it, like getting ready to make salsa, and that went kaput. So next year, onions are back. So yeah, and then when it came to planting in the field, that actually went pretty smoothly. I had, experience working on a market garden in the past, so I had, a pretty good idea about how I wanted to space things and, covering and that kind of thing. And I was actually pleasantly surprised. So I got an Earthway cedar to start with. There's 2 main cedars. There's a few others, but the 2 main ones is Earthway and Jang. Jang is a very high price point cedar, but it's very precise. Earthway is like the entry level cedar that even people with a big home garden often use. And I wasn't sure how well it was going to perform because I was used to, using this Jang. And the Earthway did great. I was so pleasantly surprised because you hear so many, kind of ho-hum comments about it. But I did even dense stuff like arugula, radish, mustard, turnip, like it did awesome. Peas, beans, like I highly recommend it. If anyone's, on the fence about getting an Earthway, it was fabulous. So that was definitely a win. And then, pests, we did have a lot of pests. More than I would say that I was used to. And I didn't have enough insect netting to go around. Like the really precious things that I, needed to cover got netting. And then the other things, it was just like, sorry. So yeah, we had, the cucumber beetles, the vine borers. The vine borers, I had to cut them out because I only had 1 planting of zucchini and patty pan or scallop squash. So I had to cut them out, and pretty much all the plants survived the vine borer attack by doing that. But it's tedious. Like it's not,
Did you wrap them with aluminum foil? Because I've heard that might help too.
Yeah, I remember hearing that. I haven't tried that, so I'm honestly not
Next
sure.
year I'm gonna try it. I'm trying everything next year.
Yeah, if it does work, that would be good to know, because cutting them out is tedious, and you only really, the plant's already kind of starting to suffer a little bit. So if they can be prevented, that's even better. But overall, I think things performed fairly well. I had stink bugs, I think, in my tomatoes, which I hadn't experienced before. So I'm going to have to think about that a little bit more. That was one of my other fails, but I knew it was going to be a fail, but I did it anyways, but I knew it was going to be a fail. I did not trellis my tomatoes, and I know all the, benefits of trellising, the reasons why. I knew I was going to hate myself when it came to harvesting, and that's basically what happened. But you know what? They were still productive. I had a few determinate varieties anyway, so I wasn't,
Did you just have a lot of like tomatoes rotting on the ground? Was that the problem?
Yeah, so you do get some rotting for sure. They're just hard. Like for me, the biggest issue is the difficulty in harvesting.
Okay.
I didn't really have disease pressure with the tomatoes too much. They were still kicking it when the frost came. But a lot of it really was about the harvesting efficiency and just how painful it is. And I knew that. I just
Yeah, you were setting up a whole new. So is that on the list of things for next year? Is to
Yeah, for sure. And I have the T-post and I wanted to do, there's a really famous trellising method that's on YouTube. It's I know Josh Satin popularized it. I don't know if others have their own versions as well, but it's called a trellis to make you jealous. And it's basically T-posts with metal conduit and then these little like T connectors. So that's, that's what I'm hoping to do. That's what I will do.
My neighbors in the community garden plot next to me, they did that, and every year they had great tomatoes, and it looked really easy. So,
is that the single lead version?
Yeah, so you would do a single liter with those. Yeah, so typically an indeterminate tomato for those ones. Yeah, so we'll see. I mean, worst case, if I feel like time is getting away from me to get again, I at least have to do a Florida weave. Like I cannot let this happen again next year. Yeah, and then my only other big fail was the kohlrabi. So I grew purple Vienna and white, I think it's white Vienna kohlrabi. And they got in late as well. Like I started the seedlings at the right time, but they should have been in, kind of more April timeframe, and they didn't get in until mid-May, which is not ideal. So they ended up, what happened was when I harvested, I tested a bunch of them, and I would say at least 1 out of every 4 was woody, if not more. And I was like, I can't, in good conscience offer this to customers. Like that's too much of a risk that they're going to get, and how I couldn't tell from looking at the bulb whether it was going to be woody or not. So I was like, and in hindsight, I did do a little bit of reading, and there's other varieties, like those are kind of the traditional varieties, but there are other varieties that, are maybe a little bit more consistent and better performing. So I'm not sure if I might do a little bit of kohlrabi next year, but maybe, tone it down a little bit.
So for next year, you don't need to get the beds tilled again, right?
That's my big debate. So really, realistically, the less you can till, the better, because you're not churning up new weed seeds and
and also you had to wait till mid-May this year, so
yeah. I mean, it was a little wetter, so I would rather not till if I can avoid it. There are some areas that are pretty weedy, so it might. I don't know. I'm gonna try to avoid tilling most of it if I can avoid it.
Are you going? I guess this is going into our next subject for winterization. Are you gonna cover it with a tarp or anything to keep those weeds down?
So what I'm looking into is some kind of a cover crop solution for the areas that aren't getting planted right away. So I'm chatting a little bit with some other growers to get some ideas about what might be best for that and easiest to manage. Because a lot of cover crops, most growers would use at least a little walk behind tractor to get them, mowed down or crimped down or things like that. So I'm looking for something that's, easy to manage, maybe just by tarping it to kill it. But ideally something that's living if I can find something. So, maybe some different clovers I'm looking at. So we'll see. More to come on that. But yeah, definitely principle number 1 is to keep the ground covered if you're not going to plant it.
Cool. Sorry, I interrupted. Is there anything else about your successes and failures from the market garden?
I think that's pretty much the the high level Cole's notes of the year from the gardening perspective. I mean,
It sounds
marketing
like
products.
for your first year doing it, it went pretty well. Like
I yeah, I was
you did so much
pretty.
work in a whole season. It's
Thanks.
most people would probably take a whole year just to get up and running, and you were able to do it and even go to market gardens and sell produce in that first year. So
That's the thing that I was most proud about was like we never missed a market. We always had a decent table to put out there. So certainly there's like I could go for hours. There's tons of things we could improve on. But I was pretty happy to just, get it all built up, get out there to market, have a nice table to present every week. So yeah, and the most important thing sometimes is just getting going. Like sometimes we can second guess and overthink and this and that, but it's like once you get going, then you start the learning process and you can figure out what needs to improve.
yeah.
So tell us what you're most looking forward to taking to market next year.
Ooh.
You can only pick one. You can only pick one.
Well, I mean, I am this is going to sound kind of lame, but I'm super excited that we have garlic next year because we didn't have a chance to plant it. So we've got a couple beds of garlic in. So that's fun. I was actually looking at this red stemmed heirloom celery that I was like, that looks so cool. So that's kind of, I don't know. I like to grow things that are a little bit off the wall. So that could be really neat.
I grew a red stem celery called Red Venture this year.
Oh.
So I don't know if that's the reason it was hollow or if I got a bug inside of it. I don't know. So I don't know. It just
maybe I better I'm gonna trial that one.
Yeah.
So I'm trying garlic for the first time, and I just recently put mine in the ground. Nice. To overwinter, and it's already started to sprout. So when will yours go in the ground, considering your winter is way more harsh than mine?
So we usually do around mid-October. That gives it some time before the ground, like basically with garlic, you just don't want the ground to freeze solid before it gets a chance to get its roots established. So you want to do it several weeks before you're getting those real hard freezes that could freeze the ground. So yeah, it's around mid-October, give or take a couple of weeks.
So you're already in the ground.
Oh yeah. Yep.
For next year. Oh, awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's it's got to have a little bit of time. And then it's a good idea to mulch it. In the market garden in the past, we typically haven't mulched, but we just plant a little bit deeper to try to prevent it, from getting those freeze thaw cycles. So, and that seems to work pretty good. The worst case is sometimes you get like some frost heaving in the spring where like certain cloves will pop up because you haven't planted them deep enough. But yeah, as long as you planted a little bit in those colder areas, a little bit deeper. If you can't get your hands on mulch or you're worried about contaminated mulch or things like that, it still tends to produce a good harvest.
All right, I'm gonna slip one more in because I love stealing ideas from the market gardeners. Y'all grow on a different level, and your information is so valuable. What's your mulch of choice at the market garden?
My what? Sorry?
Mulch. What material mulch?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, so where I used to work, so tarping, like we would use tarps as a mulch, and also a lot of landscape fabric for the long crops, but not the landscape fabric you get in the big box stores. It's like it's more of a woven. It's not like the felty kind of landscape fabric. So you can still get some weeds popping through, but it's not the same as what you typically find in, your typical big box. So we tended in the past to use a lot of those kind of mulches. Straw is very popular if you can find a source that for sure is not contaminated, which I have not been able to find personally. So likewise. that would be my choice if I could find it. So, yep.
Awesome. That helps. I am now mulch. I'm afraid of mulch for a couple of different reasons. I have had the weed issue, but more importantly, I live in an area that we have a lot of the roly-polies and earwigs, and they decimate young crops. As they start to mature, it's a little bit better, but when they're young crops, I've had entire beds wiped out. And so anytime that I have any like bags of soil or anything that maintains moisture, a pot or something like that, if I lift it up, I can without a doubt know if it's been there a week, there are going to be hundreds of roly polies and earwigs. So I'm going to stick with the tighter planting instead of mulching from now on until I learn something different.
So one thing I should have mentioned is there is a concept of compost as a mulch. So compost can be your mulch, and that can help with, you have to put on a pretty thick layer of it. It's not just like sprinkle it in. And then in that case, you're also not working it into the soil for its nutrition. You're leaving the layer of compost on top. That can be a good solution if you're in an area where, any typical, wood chips or leaves or straw, like if that tends to build up a lot of pest pressure, then maybe just, a few inches of compost on the top might be a little less susceptible to that.
Definitely can try that.
Yeah. And I guess before we end this podcast, because we're getting towards the end of our time, winterization. Let's each say one thing that we're doing to winterize our gardens. So for me, along the same vein that Mylan was just saying, I just took all the leaves and like rubbish out of my garden area to try to keep all those pests at bay, because the slugs especially love to live in those leaves. And we got a bunch of trees. I know we cut down a bunch of them, but the leaves are still falling into my garden area, and they get stuck in the fence. So I got rid of as many leaves as I could to hopefully keep the slugs at bay as much as possible for next year.
In my case, I'm using, oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Aaron.
No, go ahead, Mylan.
So in my case, I'm having to do a really tough dance of frost blankets, frost fabric. I've got aluminum hoops on one of my 20 by 3 bed, 20 by 4 bed, and then I've got a bed with essentially a built-in greenhouse. So last week we got down to 26 Fahrenheit. So I had to go and put out frost fabric on everything for those 2 days. I had to get up early the day after the frost hit, though, because it was going to be back up into the high 60s. So I had to get up and take that off, because if I leave it on, it gets too hot for my cool weather crops during the day. And since then, I've actually put all the frost blankets back in storage, because we're near 80 this week. So I'll continue to watch. We don't have any frost in the next 14-day forecast. Everything that I've got in is good to low 20s, mid 20s. So from here on out, that's what I'll be doing. Watching the 14-day forecast, getting it ready. If it, shows signs, I'll get it out. It's not fun, but it's worth it. And like I said, I really won't have to do it anymore unless they show well below freezing. Everything else is cool, sensitive, and frost tolerant, and should be able to mature over these next 2 to 3 weeks.
Yeah, and I've in the past, I've kind of taken that approach, Mylan, where you get this really long period where it's only getting cold at night, but you still get those nice warm days. So if you just, throw some kind of cover over your plants at night, even the heat loving plants, they can still finish, maturing the fruit that's on the plant and ripening, just with that nighttime cover whenever it gets cold. Like I've had really good success with that on a small scale. Where I used to work, we had hoop houses and greenhouses. I don't have that infrastructure here yet. So Peter, this year I'm taking more of an approach like you, where I wanted to try to clear the field out because it wasn't left clear last winter either. So I'm trying to clear out as much of the dead plant debris as possible. There is a little layer of chickweed, which normally I wouldn't like, but actually right now I think it's maybe helping a little bit with the erosion, but
It's
without
kind of like a cover crop too.
Yeah, exactly, but without leaving too much for the bugs to hide in. So I'm kind of trying to do a little bit more of a cleaner approach as we come into winter. I do have a few crops that I left out there because they were still kicking, like parsley and tatsoi and radish, a couple things that it's just like, well, as long as you can hang in there, that's great. So we'll see if that does help. And it was interesting when I was clearing the kohlrabi out just this past week, I did see quite a few different cabbage worms curled up under the leaves, because I had already pulled the plants and I was letting them just kind of decompose a bit on the ground, and then now I moved them off. And once I move those decomposing plants, it's like, oh, there's a cabbage worm, there's a cabbage worm, there's a cabbage worm. So it'll be interesting to see how that works out. Again, in an ideal world, you want to keep the soil covered even in winter, but depending on your infrastructure and how fast winter hit and the kind of pest and disease pressure you're dealing with, sometimes clearing it out can help too.
Yeah, and there's an argument for keeping a lot of that stuff for the good beneficial insects, but then the same argument is like, well, then you have the pests living in there, so it's hard to find the right balance of that. And if you find something that works for you, keep with it. We're all learning as we go, as we have been talking about this whole episode, is that we have our own, even though we have our own gardening podcast, we are not in any way garden experts, and we're learning every season. So,
and that's what makes gardening fun.
Yes, exactly. And so, with that, I think this is the end of the episode. We do have a email that you can, if you have any gardening questions, please email us at question@planter.garden. We will answer it on the next episode. So please send in any questions or ask us on social media, and we'll try to do that in the next episode. Until then, thank you for listening and watching, and we'll catch you on the next episode. All right, bye.
Bye, everyone.